Okay, we're going to show a little bit of a tip on behavior clue. You'll have to see both parts before you understand. Hammer and Dan's here. They're hooked together. We can walk around. Heel. I can even bump them into each other and everything's all right. Stop. Now, after we show you the second part of this scene, then you'll understand. Okay. What you doing, Dan? Now he's not really growling like he sometimes does, but more often not he'll growl. But you see him run up to Hammer. Enough, be quiet. He ran over to Hammer, and he was on the alert, and he was being domain protective, and you could see that a little bit. See if he'll growl. If you know dogs' behavior and body language, you can see that he is being domain protective. I've been working on him not to be that way, and that's why he's not as bad as he usually is. Now that's a clue. That's a clue to dog behavior and thus a clue to dog training. Dance has been loose 2 times and never bit anybody, never really bothered anybody. He did run out in the street once when some people on bikes went by. I wasn't home, and it scared the woman and she fell off her bicycle. Didn't hurt her very bad, but he didn't try to bite her. But now here, on the territory, he's really domain protective and rather aggressive. And he's aggressive towards other dogs part of the time too. I put him on a chain when I switch him around. No matter what chain I put him on, especially up one of these up here, and another dog walks past, he wants to, the hair on his back will stand up a little and he'll growl and take a aggressive stance. But and he's really that way with Hammer the worst. But as you've seen, they're hooked together and they get along fine. And so the reason that's a clue to training is because it's showing that when he's chained up at his own spot, which that's his normal spot back there, he's protective of it. And he's somewhat that way on these other 2 chains too. And he's even protective and aggressive towards the other dogs invading his little spot. But out there walking around off of the property, he can even hook up with him and they get along fine. We walk all over the place that way. And so that tells you that on the property, they're a lot more aggressive and protective than off the property. And so that's a vital clue to training. You can take a guard dog that would chew somebody's leg off if they got on the property, if they could get a hold of them. But if that dog gets loose and is running around town or the countryside, he won't necessarily be aggressive towards people because it's not his area, it's not his domain, and he has no need to protect it. And this is more of a clue for people that encounter stray dogs than it is anything. And there are dogs that are aggressive off of their domain, but it's less likely. I found a German Shepherd once, and that was in Wabash, and I got him by the collar, and he was friendly and everything, and I walked around and finally found the owner, and the owner thanked me, and I said, well, he must not be much of a guard dog. He said, why not? And I said, well, because he didn't growl at me or nothing, and as you've seen, I brought him to you. And he just kind of laughed, and he put him on his chain, and he said, now go over and try to pet him. and he said a word to him first, and it didn't seem to register, but the dog heard him, and I walked over to pet him, and the dog bared his teeth and growled. He wouldn't let me get near him, and I've always remembered that. I used to trap fur bearers, and one time I caught a dog, and I've caught cats before, and sometimes even a wild animal will let you go up to him and get them loose out of the trap, and they won't try to bite you or anything, but once they're loose, more often not than they're gone, and you won't get near them again. And so that's another clue. When an animal's in distress, a lot of times they'll let just about anybody help them, but then once it's over, they revert back to their primal ways. And so that's a really vital clue, especially for the public. And since we're on that subject, I'm gonna go into this subject a little more than I wanted to or intended to, because this thought just come to me. You're out and about and a stray dog comes up to you, or you're going to somebody's house and a dog pops out at you. What you want to do, you want to just stand still with your hands at your sides. You can make a fist if you want, but keep your hands at your sides and let the dog sniff you if you don't have time to back up. And more often than not, as long as you pose no threat, the dog will leave you alone. They might still growl. If they still growl at you, then just slowly back up and keep backing up slowly. Don't turn your back on them, and back up until the spirit of the situation changes, till the tenseness leaves, because then the dog knows you're backing off and posing no threat. Then you can, after you back off a ways, you can turn around and walk off if you need to. A properly trained guard dog is that way. If you're standing there, a properly trained guard dog isn't going to do anything. They'll stand there and watch you. As soon as you make a move, then they may grab you. But that's why you back off. Wild animal out in the woods, you come on it. A lot of times you can back off and they'll leave you alone. The Indians I've read used to use a tactic for bear and mountain lion. If they was caught out in the woods somewhere and they come upon one and they had no weapons and there was no real escape, they would make themselves look as big as they could and yell and growl and holler, and sometimes scare the animal off until they could back off or the animal run off. Okay, now Dance didn't get as aggressive as he does sometimes, and that's mostly because I've been working with him, because you don't want your dog being aggressive towards other dogs, especially your own, when they work together too. But within that scene there's also another clue to behavioral characteristics and judging the results of your training. You want your dog to be submissive to you, the master. Now, when I first took Hammer back there, Dance ran out to confront Hammer and to kind of stand his ground. And if you know dogs in their body language, even though they were subtle, you could see the domination characteristics coming out in Dance. But something else, he also come over closer to me. He tried to avoid Hammer once he sniffed him a little and determined he wasn't really a threat. But he come over and tried to get closer to me and was looking up at me like, okay, now what, boss? And that tells me that my training of dominating and being the master over Dance has taken effect. And so that's another clue in judging results of training, especially domination training, and making sure the dog knows that you are the master and not him himself.